Okay, hi everybody. Now we're gonna move into part 2 of chapter 8, where we're talking about treatment planning. And I sent you guys a link. If we wind up continuing online, I have included a new resource we're going to cover instead from the county. And I'm going to create exercises, particularly around practicing treatment planning and how to write goals and the languaging. So that's what I think I'm going to do with our extra time instead of case presentations. Okay. All right. So what does it say here? It says, like assessment, treatment planning is an ongoing process. That's absolutely true. You wind up reassessing, at least in your head, throughout the entire time they're there, because like most humans, more gets revealed over time. So people come in and sometimes they're withholding information. Sometimes they really just didn't know themselves because they weren't clear. So the more clear they get, the more they're able to kind of share information and learn about themselves, and you're able to learn about them. And in the process, we may find more case management issues to address, as well as referrals and contacts we're going to need to help them make. Okay, so for treatment problem, remember that treatment planning is collaborative. In our county, it is client-centered, so because it's individualized, it's written in their language, what concerns them, right? So it gives us a framework for kind of the joint effort we're making to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with your time here? How will we know that you've used your time successfully or in a way that's beneficial? So it provides us data points and measurement points to make sure that what we're doing is actually helping them move forward. Okay, so there's a considerable amount of time your book points out in paperwork, and it has here some JCHO ideas. That's actually the group that credentials hospitals. Okay, it's called the Joint Commission on Hospitals and Organizations. So that's when they take a look at what they're looking for in terms of ongoing accreditation. You could see some of the things they're looking for. Things like, based on a comprehensive assessment process, reflects participation from disciplines as warranted, identifies clients presenting needs, it's collaborative, there's specific goals, specific objectives, criteria for figuring out whether or not those objectives have been met, identifies each person responsible for monitoring the treatment plan and whether or not the treatment plan we've created is actually happening and satisfactorily. Is it moving along? Identifies services necessary for meeting their needs, specifies the frequency of treatment contacts. In a Medi-Cal situation, we often use the word, and I talked about this in class, of dosage, right? So each activity we're doing with a client is a dose, right? So one group is one dose. Provisions for periodic reevaluations and revisions, and then anticipating a date when at some point we'll be terminating treatment. So that's where you get the short and long-term goals that are in our treatment plan that I gave you. So, for example, to state that Jim, a chronically unemployed male, will become employed during February is not particularly helpful. We need more details. How's that going to happen? How's he going to conduct a job search? In other words, how many agencies will he contact per day in his job search, right? We need to be a little more specific about how that's going to happen. Does he have a resume, right? How does he know who to contact? I mean, there's just a lot there. Just that one example where we could build an entire treatment plan. Interventions, this is you're going to indicate what we're going to do to assist them. So the theoretical approach, we might do that. Are we going to be using CBT? Are we going to be using 12-step facilitation? That's something that peers do often, is they run 12-step facilitated groups. Treatment services, group, what kind of modality? Are we going to be doing individual? Going to be doing group? Going to be giving them packets to complete? So it's a written assignment. And then how many number of hours a week they'll be seen. So it tends to be pretty, again, specific about who, what, when, and why, and how. You need to name the actor, so name each person that's carrying it out. So, for example, if the client needs a ride, one of the examples would be, staff treatment program staff will take client to the Social Security office, right? So who's going to get them there to do what they're going to do? You set deadlines. Not all deadlines will be met. Sometimes it's not even in the client's control, right? It could be the court changes the date or the doctor reschedules, but we do the best we can to anticipate realistic dates. And then you write a discharge summary where when they're complete, you're going to summarize what's happened in treatment, and then what specifically are you recommending that they do to retain the progress they've made and to make further progress down the line. Also, any medication management, so you need to be specific again. What are they taking, how much, when, that kind of thing. So you're going to be refining it as you go. It's not set in stone. Again, more could get revealed. You could learn something new. It may be that you decide to add something later, like medical assisted treatment. The client comes in, they feel like they can manage their withdrawal pretty well, but a couple weeks in, it's not going well. They're having a lot of cravings. Okay, maybe we need to add a referral for medication management to help stabilize them. Same thing with mental health. They come in, they don't particularly identify a mental health need. A few weeks in, their anxiety is preventing them to focus in group. They can't complete things. They're too depressed to get out of bed. Okay, I need to add something to the treatment plan. So you're going to take into mind the treatment goals, consideration of their stage of treatment, and again, the whole idea is to make sure that the tasks or the goals and objectives that you are trying to match will match their stage of change, right? So if somebody's not in action, you're going to have to do more education kind of goals, exploration kind of goals, more learning, taking addiction quizzes, filling out addiction packets. How do I know I'm an addict? That kind of thing. So they can start to explore for themselves whether this is even true for them. Because for you to treat them like it's just a given that, of course, they're an alcoholic or addict is not going to allow you to feel like you're connected and that, we've got a solid alliance, all right? They do talk about an affirmative focus, so you have to keep in mind some clients have had a lot of rejection in their life. They've had a lot of failure. They've come up against a lot of obstacles. So again, we set small, achievable goals, things they can do. We don't want to set them up for something that's too large or takes too long or it's too hard. So saying, you will complete your, progress, not perfection packet, to explore whether or not you're an addict by next week would be reasonable. They have a week to do that. They could do it, right? To have made the decision you're an addict in a week, that's not a reasonable goal. In fact, for some of us, even if we're saying we're an addict, it still takes us a year to actually believe that, okay? It's like a stone dropping through the pond. At some point, about a year into recovery, the stone hits the ground and you go, oh shit, I'm never going to drink again, even though all this time you've been saying I'm an alcoholic, okay? So it takes a while. So it's never realistic to expect for them to, by the time they leave treatment, fully accepted they're an alcoholic or addict. Most people, not so much. They have a reservation, as we say in recovery. You're going to monitor the outcomes, so you're going to take a look at, how are they doing in terms of internalizing. Remember that most people in early recovery are externally focused. It takes a while to internalize the goal of recovery, to want to recover for yourself. Most people are entering recovery at the request of someone else. So again, in 30, 45 days, I don't know how much they're going to actually internalize it, but as much as they can, we want to help them support that. In other words, they need to take on their beliefs about why it's necessary for them to get clean and sober, because that's the only way they will stay in sobriety. They will not stay in sobriety, okay, if it's for the court, because as soon as they've completed probation, it's on again. All right. You're going to take a look at behavioral outcomes in terms of the ASAM level of severity. And again, making sure it matches. And then you're also going to take into account, level 4, high risk, right? Level where we need to get immediate crisis intervention, stabilization right away. Okay. Then we have the idea of progress notes. You're going to have to, it's important to document what's happening. We've talked about this. You need to be able to track, not just for yourself, not just for the auditor, but again, if you're on vacation, you get hit by a bus, somebody needs to be able to pick up your case file and see where you are with the client and how to proceed. If you're not keeping track of this, you don't have a treatment plan, you don't have any progress notes, basically what you're doing is you're setting it up so that if something happens to you, right, or if you go away, whoever's covering is going to have to start from the gate. And that's not helpful for the client, it's frustrating for them, and it interrupts their continuity of care. So it's really important you stay on top of this, and you're going to have to find your own time management method to do it. So you're going to have to check with the client on their progress, you're going to have regularly scheduled sessions, and at each one of these things you're going to write a chart note. We don't keep private notes on clients, not that we'd even have time to do that, but basically everything you have goes into the electronic record. Most places you will work now, it is all electronic. You're going to be using the computer a lot. You're going to need to type in everything. And the thing about that is when you type it in, it's time stamped and it's a real time. That's how you keep track of whether you're on your top of it or not, because there's due dates like in 10 days or 7 days or 21 days. You need to have certain things done. And every agency you go to will give you a training about that, and they'll tell you about your due dates and help you, again, figure out how to track it and make sure you're on top of it. Also, that's what the clinical supervisor's for. They're supposed to be monitoring that as well. Okay, so you need to record the particulars of the meeting right on the same day if you can. Some people use what's called the SOAP notes. So subjective focuses on the client's perception of the problem. Objective, the factual data about the problem. Counselor's observation, client statements. Assessment is the client's perception of what do we need to do next, what do I think they need to do next, basically what have we agreed that we're going to do next, and then finally the plan itself. Okay, we've agreed on a particular plan, we agree on what you need to do, okay, here's the steps you're going to need to follow to be able to do it. And they give you an example here for Lee C., who agrees to avoid people who influence him to drink. Okay, so I'll let you read through that where they go through the particular SOAP process for that. They also give you another one, supplemental observations, activities, impressions, goals, and plans. So again, what's going to work for you? Now, it's not a paragraph. You're not writing a narrative. Okay, it's not like a summary. Okay, so we're talking about a few sentences. Really, in a SOAP note, if you use SOAP, you might be able to do it in 4 sentences, okay? As you get practice, you'll get better and better at it. You'll know you're better at it because your notes will shorten, okay? Because you'll be able to say things more specifically with a lot of detail in a short period of time. Okay, you'll get better at it. Resources and services, you're going to need to use your expertise, but this is, of course, the heart of case management, right? Helping people connect to the agencies and specialties and professionals they need to actually carry out the treatment plan that's been written for them. Okay, now again, if you're the counselor, you may also be doing case management. A lot of agencies don't have separate case managers. Like I told you, we're just now starting to do that. So again, you're going to be juggling all of the counselor duties, treatment plan, as well as the education group process, and you're also going to be able to do documentation and the case management as well. So again, the idea of creating your own personal directory, one of the things I'm having you do is create your own special population, and what I'm going to do is combine all of those together, and then I think what I'll do is just send it to you as a PDF so that you'll have it, because if we don't return to school by May, okay? And they give you a couple of examples here. They also encourage us to take a look at impediments to treatment. Impediments to entering treatment posed by caretaker roles, being a parent, right? The primary breadwinner. These are big obstacles for people being able to start treatment. If they're taking care of somebody ill or elderly, what if they're pregnant? So part of this is paying attention to, maybe somebody needs something more specialized. Maybe the truth is they need to do outpatient because of childcare, family responsibilities, even though residential would probably be the better fit for them, but given their life obligations, that may not be possible. So again, all of this is negotiated with what the bottom line is. What is the client willing to do, right? What are they willing to do? There's what I think they could do, should do, and even the client could think it would be better for me to do that, but based on what's really happening in their world, that may or may not be possible. They also have us take a look at physical and mental abuse. So again, this idea of taking a look at people's trauma, we've talked a little bit about trauma. We'll talk about trauma more in the integrated behavioral health class, but the idea that somebody has early trauma, right? We talked about being trauma informed, keeping in mind that people may have their own scar tissue from being in physical, sexual, emotionally abused relationships, maybe consecutively, maybe since they were a child. And so they are going to have large fight or flight reactions. Okay, one of the consequences of having lifetime trauma is fight or flight, really quick to kindle. Well, actually, it's fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, so you may say something that's actually fairly benign and you'll see them lock up. Okay, so recognizing that sometimes our client's ability to hear us and process what we're asking is impacted by how much anxiety they're carrying and how much previous trauma. And so you will repeat yourself a number of times. Just because you say something to somebody, do not assume that they will be able to hear you and get it, okay? They also ask us to take into account people's ethnicity and social class, and we've talked a little bit about this also, the idea that people's cultural perspective matters, particularly if you want them to be effective, so helping them connect with opportunities to support their cultural identity, particularly the parts of their cultural identity that support recovery. That's going to help them shore them up, particularly in this early transition where they need all of the words of affirmation and support they can get. Self-assessment. Usually counselors will make assessment of somebody's self-image, self-esteem, self-efficacy, meaning, how much are people going to be able to actually utilize what we're doing? One of the things in Dimension 5, when we talk about relapse prevention, right, has to do with how much do we think somebody can actually act on the tools they have. And sometimes people will have all kinds of information. They'll know a lot about recovery. It is not their first rodeo, okay? But it may be that actually doing what they need to do, like standing up for themselves, or like asking for help, or writing, speaking to their partner, may be too much for them. Hang on a second. My camera has gone, oh dear. My monitor has gone dark, so I'm not sure if you're even, oh, there I am. Okay. Yeah, we're still recording. Okay. Whoops. Yeah. Okay. So, the other thing that it talks about is, okay, so figuring out what are the personal impediments the person may be having, okay, and also taking a look at criminal offenses we may need to take into account because their criminal obligations are going to matter, okay? Taking a look at, how often what's happening with them is related to pressure from other parts of their lives, okay? There may be criminal activity, criminal influences that are still going to be potentially in the way of what it is they're trying to accomplish. So who else is in their world, right? I can have a lot of commitment to my own recovery and still be very immersed in situations that are not necessarily going to be supportive or going to be engaged in what I'm doing, okay? All right, then we have the idea of community linkages, all right, the referral network. So how do you help somebody reintegrate? Okay, it's just as important. Remember we talked about you start planning for discharge prior to somebody even being released, okay? So we're always thinking about how's somebody going to move back into the community smoothly, okay? And because it's important. When we look at the idea of treatment being kind of a little hothouse, right? You're there for, 30, 45 days. It's its own little universe, right? It's a big adjustment to go back into all of those pressures and people pulling on you and people wanting to know where you've been, going back to doing things for the first time, not loaded, okay? So there's a lot of transition challenge for people, and we need to be upfront about that. We need to talk about that, plan for it. Say, what are you going to do? Remember that change plan I had you practice? Maybe something like that to help them plan for what could get in their way. They need to have some sort of game plan for that because stuff's going to pop up. Do they need anything else? Drug medical, their social security card, driver's license. Again, what do they need to get set up so that in the transition back out into the world, they're the most successful they can possibly be, okay? So this was Chapter 8, Part 2. I hope you're all well, and I look forward to seeing you soon.